Here's Jeff Long. You can send me how many people are there, including yourself, so we can get a number. For everybody that's on here, if you haven't already, you can go to your chat, put how many total people are there. Trying to give them a total number. And just as a reminder, what we have here in church is about 30 to 45 seconds delay once I start broadcasting. So we'll pause additional here for you guys to have comments if you have any. How many we have? So far there's 11.
Good morning, everyone. Looks like we do have a quorum. Quorum's determined by our actual Zion member count, which is 403. We have to have 25%, and we need 101, and we've got a little over that. So that's a good start. Call the meeting to order. I'd like for everybody to take a look at the secretary's report. Where's Lauren at? Take a few minutes to review that. I don't want to read it, but so take a few minutes to look at it and see what you think. Does anybody see any additions or corrections to the last, which was actually the semi-annual meeting last year? If there's no additions or corrections, can we entertain a motion to approve the secretary's report as reported? We have a first, Larry Dregge a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Now we'll go on to the treasurer's report, and I'll turn it over to Patrick Schrader.
Hello, everybody. All right, you guys should be able to take a look at this starting on page 6. All right. So I will not go over the budget. I'm going to go over the income statement and the activity for 2025. Starting out, once we get it pulled up here. So for the 2025 year, we had total income of $569,833. That's the bottom number in the top section there. That's a huge increase from last year, but there's a lot of things going into that. I'll get into that here in a minute. But the top line, the starting point is the regular offering. I do want to make a note for you guys. I did compare to last year, and I don't know if you remember last year I talked about how we were down in regular offerings, things like that. We actually spent a little bit more than we brought in last year. That was a big turnaround for this year in 2025. So 2024, our offerings have been down. This year we really made a big recovery on that, and we had increased. And overall income versus expenses this year, we made $7,700 versus last year we spent about $3,600 or so. So that regular offering line had about a $27,000 increase from the year before. Okay, so we made good improvement as far as the regular offering goes from that line. Other notable things from this income section, again, I mentioned if you go down to the bottom of that income section, the income from other funds, the $331,248, that compares to about $149,192 last year. We've had a lot of things come in this year, random income sources. That includes a lot of things from insurance. So we had all the damage to the building this year and received a lot of insurance payments relating to that. That flows through that funds. Most of that is building funds, as we'll get into a little later in the report. Okay. So overall, we had a good increase in income this year compared to last year, just in general from the income side. Scroll down a little bit more for me up there if you can. Balance sheet side, we ended with a strong balance sheet here. Total assets of $368,106. That compared to $280,801 last year. So a lot of that is funds that are left over, still waiting to be done for the steeple project and other projects that are there. So there's a lot of funds kind of sitting there waiting for that project to complete. Okay, so balance sheet is in a pretty good position here at the end of the year. If you go down a little more, this fund balances and the activity here, this is really where all the activity in the church happens in the financials. Okay, that general fund is mostly the regular offering going in. So if you look up at the top, we had $221,440, the receipts. All that activity up top is what goes through the general fund, and so that includes your regular offering, includes the Christmas Eve offering, cemetery income, things like that. That's that 238 receipts line. The disbursements, that's what we pay out. Salaries, our utilities, all those types of costs go through the disbursements line. So the difference between those two is about $7,700, which is what I mentioned. We made a little bit more this year through general than we spent. Okay. So we'll also, as we go over the budget, you'll see the expense line, and I don't think that's in my category, but I can talk about it if I need to. But overall, we did decent from there. But you can also see all the activity in all the other funds. Okay, so you've got the building fund, a lot of activity through that this year. And we talked about this, the roof project, the steeple project, things like that, things that have come in. We had a very large donation during the year, which if you guys pay attention to council meeting notes, that had come in. Ron McLaren had donated a large portion that went into the building fund, and we put it there. It was around the same timing we had all the damage to the church, and we kind of designated a lot of that to go to those types of projects. So we had $167,000 flow into building fund this year, disbursements out of it for various projects. Some of it is the repair work that's already been done. That's most of what's come out of it this year. We're still hitting with a pretty good balance. If you scroll a little to the right, we still have a pretty good balance right now of $113,926. I know Roger's going to go over the anticipated costs and things for the steeple project, and I think that we mentioned that recently in a meeting as well. Other big fund changes, obviously the solar fund. We finished the solar project this year, and so all the remaining receipts came in for that and were then dispersed. And so that fund has pretty much gone down to zero at the end of the year, and so that has been active, and we'll get into that later on in the meeting as far as the activity for that. So solar fund is pretty well wrapped up. That piece is done. The rest of this is pretty normal compared to previous years. I will say we've got the mental health initiative that, you know, a lot of the funds for that were dispersed during 2025 as well. So a lot of activity throughout this. We're ending, from an overall financial position, we have a fair amount more than we did in the previous year. A lot of that is due to funds that have not yet been dispersed for the steeple project. So a lot of information I've thrown at you guys. Any questions on this section, either in the income section or down in the fund activity? I'm told to pause for 30 seconds for online.
Any questions, you can unmute or put it in chat. I'll broadcast it through.
10, 8, 10. You're covering budget piece. Okay, sounds like there's no questions online. So I will move on to the next section if we can approve all at once here. I won't go over that. I was gonna cover the audit report. So on this set of financials we just reviewed, we had Brian Crace and Tina Spears help me, and they did, well, I shouldn't say help me, they did the church audit on these books for the 2025 year. This was completed on January 21st, 2026. I'll read that letter, unless Brian wants to run up here and read it real quick, but I can do it too. With the Council and Congregation of Zion United Church of Christ, we conducted a limited examination of the records of the treasurer of Zion UCC for the period of 1/1/25 through 12/31/25. There was a sample of cash receipts taken, compared to bank statements and weekly cash sheets. Sample of expenditures were compared to properly approved invoices. Actual expenditures were reconciled to general ledger and compared to the budgeted amount. Bank statement was reconciled to treasurer's records to verify the accuracy of the balance. In our opinion, the treasurer's records as submitted to the council and congregation for 1/1/25 through 12/31/25 accurately reflect the cash receipts and disbursements as recorded by the records of the treasurer. And that was signed by Brian Crace and Tina Spears, 1/21/2026. All right, last chance, I guess, for any questions on this section of the financials. And if there are no questions, I would ask for a motion to approve the treasurer's report and financials. Hans, is there a second? A lot of seconds, okay. Matt Kern, all in favor? Aye. Any nays? All right, thank you guys. I will be back up here, but not as much as last meeting.
Okay. We'll go on to the endowment report at this time. It's in your brochure as well. I think this is just an update report from the endowment. It's not the annual payment. That's done on the semi-annual meeting, or the annual audits and stuff on it. So that's any comments, questions on the endowment at this time? All right, then we'll proceed on to the Partners in Food. That's Hans.
I think what you see in the report is somewhat self-explanatory, so the only two things I want to add is you do see receipts are up for this year, and Consolidated Grain and Barge headquarters came in at the end of the year with an additional $15,000 donation. So thanks to them for that. Three names that you don't see as highlighted in the report that need to be highlighted are John Moy, Roger Radel, and Laura Dregge, who help us out on the back end quite a bit. So if there's no questions, thank you very much.
All right, then next one on the list here is a Zion Nursery Center report. Talked to Sandy. She says everything's there. very glad to see, I probably can't find it, no, I'm looking for it. We do have a person who's going to kind of be the secondary blank here. Director, thank you very much. But anyway, and Sandy's gonna stay on and assist a kind of a co-job this year, and then she should be able to, new person know enough about it to be able to take over. And that's, to me, that's great news to keep the nursery center moving. Any questions there? Throwing a lot at you, I know that. That's part of it, I guess. Solar update, that's Patrick's up next here.
All right, couldn't keep me away for too long. So, and I apologize for this. I had sent this to Ruth, or thought I did, and didn't realize that they didn't get the attachments. So you guys should have had a report in your files, but did not. So Carl Barkett, as he tends to do, did an amazing job of pulling together details on the activity from the solar project. I thought I left my notes up here for this. Maybe not. Let me find that real quick. So what's on the screen is Carl's report from this. And so we went live in June, so we had a full 5 months of data. We didn't quite get December in by the time he ran these reports. But let me pull this up on my end too. Okay. So at the end of the day, the solar project went live on June 30th, 2025. Since that time, our solar panels produced 24,167 kilowatts of power, hours of power. Of that, 10,884 was consumed by the church and parsonage. So that means we produced far more than we ended up using. 12,690 was exported back to CenterPoint for credit. So that excess, a good chunk of that, went back to CenterPoint and got us credits against future bills. There's 725 kilowatt hours that were lost to some inefficiencies in the system. So there's going to be some of that, I think, as you go along. Our net savings from the project was $29.58 for the first months, ended December 10th. Again, we're missing that December time period. Of that savings, 1,949 was from actual solar power consumed while we were using it. 497 was from the credits we get from CenterPoint. That's offsetting some of the other. And then 512 was from reduced demand. And I'm not going to get into the whole demand situation, complicated, but we did have savings of $29.58 in the first 6 months from the project. CenterPoint, he makes a lot of notes here, not necessarily bashing CenterPoint, but I think that's kind of the effect of it. Those credits do get reduced. They are reducing how much we get back from producing and giving it back to the grid. In addition to that, he did note that our savings were actually more than we anticipated. So we had budgeted $27.26 in this first period, and we ended up with $29.58. He attributes some of that to the fact that CenterPoint has continued to increase its rates and will continue to do so over the next period of time. It's expected to go, he said it's a nearly a 30% increase in CenterPoint rates, like as he was comparing last year to this year, and I know that's continuing to be phased in. So that is good news that we did this effectively to offset some of those increases. And one point I didn't get to, which I know Tim's going to talk about this when we get to the budget side of things, is a comparison of how much did we spend versus last year and what the difference makes, and you'll kind of see that when we get to that side of things as well. So he wanted to compare electrical bills just in general. So we paid CenterPoint $27.64 this year from July to December 12th, and $42.03 for the same 5 months of 2024. So the year before we had $42.03, this year we only paid $27.64. We actually consumed 3,000 more kilowatt hours in 2025 than we did in 2024. And the actual savings is more than that 1,500 difference because of the 30% increase in rates that he talked about. So to simplify all this, and a lot of that is reflected in the data that's shown on screen. At the end of the day, the solar project is saving a little bit more than we expected it to, mostly because of an increase in rates from CenterPoint, and we are on track. As far as we're a little bit ahead of the game as far as when we thought our buyback was going to be based off of that. So any questions on that piece of it and kind of what the activity from the solar project was? Okay. Final comments as far as solar project goes. The back part of this, I don't know if you guys recall all the discussions, and part of this was receiving the credit back from the government as far as putting the solar project in place. That will be happening over the course of the next month or so. The way that functions, we file a tax return to receive that payment back. I have all the forms, I have all the information, I'm just waiting for the system to go live to be able to file that form, essentially. It's around $37,000 is what I'm expecting to get back when we file the forms. That will happen sometime in the 2026 year, after I file the forms. Okay. Any final questions, anything on the solar project side? And there's obviously people out here in the crowd too that are part of the solar committee that can help answer as well. But any questions in general on the solar project? Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Quiet group today.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, on that. Got our budget review coming up next, and I'll turn that over to Patrick and Tim Haynert. They know that's their job.
You're going to stand behind me? Correct my mistakes. Okay, in your packet on page 5 is our budget for 2026. Okay, I'm going to just hit some of the highlights. On personnel, we took them up 5% this year because in 25, all salaries were held flat because of, as Patrick had mentioned, and 24, we were concerned with church cash flow. So we're playing a little bit of catch up on this year on the personnel. Like I said, so we upped them by 5%. Come down next under the pastor's pay and salary. Same way, his salary's up 5%. Pastor medical was up 4.74%, or this is the budget, it's going to be up, excuse me. There was a few things that were flat. Dental and vision was flat. Continuing ed was flat. Down to the next, church benevolences. We held that flat for 26. Come down to operational expense. Just going to hit a couple ones that changed. Utilities. We are at 13.5 versus last year it's 14,000. In an ideal world with our solar project, we was hoping to be a lot less, but as you're all well of, CenterPoint has taken care of that with the rate increases. So 13.5 we believe is a good number. Down, office supplies is down. I believe that has to do with the purchasing of envelopes. They're giving envelopes. Some years it's up because they don't get purchased every year, I believe. Moving down committee and budget, the only significant change, we upped recreation due to the good turnout that we had at the Otters game this past year, and we would like to see that in the future. Moving down, next under property and maintenance, property insurance is up a fair amount. Part of that is coverage for the solar panels, and part of that is due to the claims that were turned in for the church steeple, the church roof, parsonage roof, garage roof, etc. Property maintenance was raised 5%, and custodians was raised 5%. So down at the bottom, that gives a total budget increase of 4.26%. For total budget for 2026, $234,608.61. Questions on items? Seeing none, there's your budget, Mr. President.
Okay, if there's no further questions, can we entertain a motion to accept the budget for 2026? Teresa, a second? First hand I've seen right behind Teresa's head, Chuck. Okay, Chuck Schrader.
Hang on before you vote.
Okay, hang on before we say A. Any questions? Oh, he's online here.
Any questions before we vote? No questions.
No questions? All right. All those in favor of accepting the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. And now, I know it's not the Cemetery Association's review time. That's usually in the fall or in the semi-annual, but they've been working on the Constitution to update it to be currently as we operate it. So from that, I'll turn it over to Larry Dregge, and he can take us through that.
Thank you, Bobby, and thank you to the church council for allowing me to present our new guidelines for the cemetery. It was a good opportunity. It was something we've been wanting to do for some time, so appreciate the opportunity. Bear with me for just a brief history lesson because I think it will lead up to the reasons that we needed to update our articles. The year was 1845. We didn't have this church that we're sitting in today. We had a little church across the road on our existing old cemetery. Probably a small wooden church. The cemetery was created at that time in 1845. It served our church well for over 75 years before the new cemetery started. Some of the unique things back then, we were an evangelical church. Most of the stones across the road in the old cemetery are in German. The congregation spoke in German. Most of the stones in our new cemetery are now, of course, in English. Members were buried, regulation then on the old cemetery, members were buried at the time of their passing. Very few family members are buried together on our old cemetery because the church bylaws said that you were buried at the time of your passing. That certainly has changed a lot with our new cemetery. A lot of things changed. This church was built in 1895, I think. So a lot of things changed from 1845 to 1921 when the new cemetery was established. Including this church that we're sitting in this morning. At that time in 1921, and I know I've held this little green book up many times, but these were our Articles of Association. These were our guidelines that were created in 1921. Certainly, I think our forefathers, when they started this new cemetery, thought that, families wanted to be together, be buried with their families. That didn't happen in the old cemetery. That does happen now on our new cemetery. Members were able to buy lots and could purchase up to as many as they needed to from a single lot to a lot size of 8 that was established in 1921. Made a lot of improvements to our cemetery program. Some of the things, though, that were contained in this little green book, and some of it seems a little bit humorous, but these are actual guidelines that we still, to this day, followed in this green book. Lot owners were assessed a fee of $1 to take care of the cemetery at that time, back in 1921. Women could not vote on cemetery affairs unless they were widowed and their husband was buried in the cemetery. Then women could vote on cemetery policies. 1921. Members were assessed, if the cemetery treasury ran low, members were assessed to build up that cemetery treasury back then. A burial as a result of a suicide was not allowed to be buried in the same spot as our normal members were buried in. I think, at least to the best of my recollection, there are some graves that are just adjacent to our solar panels on our old cemetery where there are some members or community members as well as church members that would have died by suicide or buried this time. The cost of 8 lots was $40 back in 1921. It's still in our regulations. Certainly, we don't follow those anymore. So, fast forward now to 1921, Russell Rare, Nancy Dugan, and myself all realized, and I've been talking about it, that we needed to get these guidelines, mostly language, updated. There were a lot of references to costs in the old one. You can't really put cost in because they're going to fluctuate, they're going to change. So we took some of those things out. We added, we had guidelines that we have voted for. I presented them, I think, the first year I was involved with the cemetery. We submitted, and the council or the congregation approved some guidelines that are mainly centered around cremations. Those were not part of our articles, but they were a separate document that was part of our cemetery. So that gave us an opportunity to put those all into one document. So Russell, Nancy, and I got together, met several times. Resources that we used for the new guidelines were neighboring churches. I visited some neighboring churches, got guidelines that they had for their cemeteries. We used those for some language. Certainly the Indiana Cemetery Association was a big asset for us. They have guidelines that are online that we can follow, some of the verbiage that we have in our new guidelines. The bottom line, basically, we didn't take anything away. We updated, took things out that weren't applicable anymore, some of the things that I just mentioned, and cleaned up the language. Certainly our church, over the history, we've revised our church constitution several times. Other than an amendment in 1936, this document has never been changed from 1921. So certainly it was time for us to do some things. So with that, we passed out some draft versions several weeks ago for all of you to pick up if you had to take a look at, if you had questions. Prior to me asking for a motion to accept the draft, I'm going to open the floor up at this time for any questions that anybody might have in relation to this draft version. Larry, are we looking at the draft now? That is the draft version, yes, that's correct. My question is, okay. On article, we just passed it on Article 2, is that right? Where it says, I'm kind of trying to remember this, so I'll have to tell you. Primarily, can you read that third sentence there? Can you repeat the question? So we're in Article 2 of. Right there. The cemetery is primarily for members and family members of the congregation. What does that mean? It would be the primarily and not members of the family members of the congregation. Who would those be? Well, there are certainly people that are buried on our cemetery that may or may not, may have been, may not be members of the church. Am I answering your question right there? I'm talking about in the future, from here on forward. Who would the people be? Is it open up to the public, I guess is my question? We have had inquiries from the public about obtaining lots. Certainly there are, we are one big family. Certainly there are family members that may not be members of our church that could fall into that guideline, where they want to be buried in a family plot. They're not members currently of Zion Church. Well, that's covered in that. I'm worried more about, you got some pretty cheap prices. We're still pretty cheap. Pretty reasonable compared to other cemeteries, yeah. We're getting out how cheap we are, and someone coming in and buying plots, and we don't even know who the heck they are. We do have a separate price structure for non-members to purchase lots. Any non-members that inquire about it a lot, it has to be approved by the cemetery committee, and I think that wording is in our new guidelines somewhere. I can't pinpoint it exactly. But yeah, that is our only protection, is that the price structure is different and that it has to be approved by our committee, if non-members. I don't know, Nancy and Russell, you may have more input. I don't know that we've had a lot of, other than family members that aren't members of the church.
Yeah, I'm just looking to the future. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got our plots, it's not gonna affect us.
Yeah.
but People in the future, if we have a bunch of, let's say, a bunch of people from around the area who realize, hey, this is a pretty good deal, and then we're taking plots away from parishioners and family of parishioners. I'm just bringing it up.
Yep, and I think I can tell you that we've had a couple cases where people that had no relationship to Zion Church or any of the members have inquired, and we didn't follow through with selling lots. So we do reserve that the committee reserves that opportunity to review any request. You know, the new cemetery, we're probably around 50% capacity. We've got another third of an acre directly to the north of this cemetery that's in crops right now that can be used for cemetery. You know, I feel like we're in a pretty good position. Some of the things that I think that we probably will look at in the future are, you know, a lot of cremation's becoming more and more popular. So do we need to look at some things for handling cremation type burials? There's a lot of cemeteries that are doing above ground small crypts and mausoleums that cremations can be placed in. So certainly way down the road, that may be something the church looks at, but you know, I feel like we're in pretty good position with lots that are available right now for burial. So. Any other questions? I will ask for a motion to submit. Anything online? Motion to submit and approve the new minutes, the new guidelines. We have a motion. Second? Sandy? Sandy, go ahead.
Steve,
I think we'll do the vote. If there's no other discussion, I think we'll do the vote by a show of hands. All those in favor of approving the revised guidelines as submitted, raise your right hand. Okay. Opposed, same sign. Thank you all very much. Who was the second? First and second. Sandy Willett was the second. I'm sorry, Jeff. Yeah. The draft, any of you that have the draft copies, I'm going to make the cemetery committee will make a new document. It'll have today's date as the revision date for the new guidelines, updated with that, and I'll make those available to the congregation either by, you know, I might make an announcement after church, but I'll make all of those new guidelines available in the foyer or at some point so that any members that want a copy of the new guidelines can get them. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Larry and group, for keeping us up with the times. Okay, like to go through the nominations for our council members, starting today, I guess is the right words. Current nominations are Carl Barkett, Rosie Bogard, and Brian Crace. And now here's where my Robert's rules don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I think if there are no nominations from the floor, can we ask a motion to close the nomination? Oh, ask for nominations, thank you very much. Ask for nominations. Are there any nominations from the floor?
Move to close nominations.
Hans Smits moved to close the nominations. Second, Larry Draghi. All opposed, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I'm sorry. See, you got me backwards here. I read the wrong word here. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Sorry about that. Keep me in line, folks. Okay. And then it says here, which I know we did last year, ask for a motion to elect the 3 proposed candidates by acclamation. So moved by Patrick. Is there a second? Michelle? And there again, all those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed? Congratulations to Carl, Brian, and Rosie. And Pastor Jeff, do you want to install the new members today?
We need to do that, yes.
Patrick, did you have that figure?
Yep.
All right. What we're going to do now is just have a quick installation of officers and a recognition. Mr. Jeff Draghi will also be a part of that installation, but was not a part of those nominations. When I call him forward, he is going to serve and is serving today as our secretary because Andrea Singer had resigned her position. And so Jeff was asked by and approved by the church council. But before we get into that, I want to recognize Mr. Bob Yunker, who served and will be ending his term as a church council member and our church council president. One of the things that Bob had told me many times by being engaged in this church council and serving as president and even your other roles that you had prior to that, that you learned so much about the people of the church and how the church operates on a daily basis. And I can't thank you enough for your service. Every time I'd call Bob, he'd answer the phone, "Yes, boss," which was completely unnecessary and not warranted. But I thank you for your service and all of your presence in the church and your leadership. Bob Yunker, thank you very much. Patrick Schrader will be leaving our church council as well. For those of you that were a part of church council and will remain a part of the church council, and those of you that were a part of the congregation as we went through the whole solar project process, Patrick was an integral part of that, and his knowledge and understanding of the finances and all the stuff that went with that, not just the church, but the whole rebate process and working with the federal government's program, and again, as he mentioned earlier, the filing of these tax forms. You, your family, and everyone in your extended family that has been involved in this church for the number of years that they have, can't thank you enough. He'll be also serving as a member of our the future, the long-range planning committee as well in the future. So Patrick, thank you so much for your service as well. Stacy Wagner will be leaving. I don't know, is Stacy here today? Thank you, Stacy. All right, we'll move on. what I want to do now is invite the following people who will be serving in our congregation in different leadership roles to come forward. I want to first invite Nancy DeClassy Wolford, Roger Radel, Tim Hainert, Lauren Kern, Adam Kendall, Rosie Bogard, Brian Crace, Carl Barkitz, unable to be here with us today, and Jeff Dragey. Please come forward for affirmations from our congregation. Look at this group. Don't they look like a pretty good group? To all of you gathered, sisters and brothers, we're called by God into covenant with one another to love, serve, seek justice, and to walk humbly with God. Today, we celebrate those who have been chosen by this congregation to offer their gifts of leadership in the life of the and ministry of the church. Each of you have been elected by this congregation to a position of leadership and trust. Do you accept the office to which you have been chosen? And do you promise to perform duties of your office faithfully, seeking the guidance of the Holy Spirit? If so, please say, I do. And do you promise to work cooperatively with others, to be faithful in prayer and service, and to seek unity and well-being for this congregation, our commitment to the community and the wider church? If so, please say, I do. Members and friends who are gathered here of this congregation, do you accept these leaders as servants of Christ, and will you support them with your prayers, your encouragement, and maybe most importantly, your cooperation? If so, please say, we do. Good job. Would you join me in a moment of prayer? Gracious and loving God, we thank you for the gifts that you planted in your people and for the willingness of these leaders to serve. Pour out your Holy Spirit upon them, granting wisdom, patience, courage. Give them joy. May their leadership be guided by love, their decisions shaped by justice, their service rooted in humility. Strengthen this congregation in its shared ministry, that together we may be the body of Christ in the world. Amen. It's in the name of Jesus Christ and on behalf of this congregation, I am honored to announce you as duly installed as leaders within the life of this church. Congratulations to you all. Good job. Yeah, great to serve with you. You got it. Timmy.
Whoa.
Good job. Good job, bro. Welcome aboard. Roger.
Yeah.
Nancy.
Not sure about the cooperating bit.
You're not sure about the cooperating bit. Can we have a motion to review? All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Now, the last thing we want to get here is steeple update. Roger's got some numbers to kind of share with us on it, and hopefully they'll be starting sometime soon.
There is part of this in a page in the program, but I've got a little bit more to add to that. This is basically a report from the repair from the April 2nd storm that we're still working on. All of the roofs have been repaired and all the damaged siding has been replaced also. The insurance paid enough on our claim to do all the repairs, and the church had no out-of-pocket expenses for these two projects. This is because of the $5,000 donation to cover the deductible on our policy. The steeple repair was supposed to already started, but the weather has not cooperated, which everyone knows. The repair should take 2 months if they could work every day, and depending on when they get started, we'll have to see about that. The way the weather looks, it's going to be March time frame would be my better guess before they'll be able to get started. The estimate for the zinc metal and aluminum trim for the steeple is $124,366.08. We will receive $24,413.49 from the insurance claim to be applied to the cost of the repair. The church received a $10,000 and a $25,000 donation towards the steeple project. The council made a $25,000 request from the endowment fund to have enough money to do the projects. The insurance company is still holding $3,601.72 until the project is completed, and they will send the rest of the money once proof of completion is sent to them. The cost to paint the louvers and trim at the bottom of the steeple and aluminum gutters on the north side of the foyer entryway is $11,350, and the insurance has agreed to pay half the cost of this. The church has not yet received any money towards this project from the insurance company. The reason they are only paying half is because the hail damage was on the west and the south side of the steeple only. The painting will be done after the steeple repair has been done. I talked to the adjuster about the time length getting repairs done, and Fred said that will not be a problem, and they will pay the church once we get everything done. I want to thank everyone for their patience on the project getting done. It is very hard to get work done fast on the steeple since we only have one contractor that works on steeples. So that's kind of where we're at right now on the steeple. If anybody's got any questions or concerns on that. I know it's slow going, but we did get part of it done, the roofs and the siding anyway. If anybody has any questions or concern on them projects. Thank you, everybody.
All right, I just want to take a minute to thank everybody for being here today and for supporting me and helping me as I served my term as president here. I must admit I did enjoy it. It got me into places I'd never been in the church. I'd never been up on top of the bell or up on top of the steeple. Crawled into the basement trying to look for a place for solar to run. So it's been it's been enlightening, and thank you very much for your support. With that, I'd like to short organizational meeting after this at the Sunday School Hall for the new council members and current council members. Does anybody have any new business? I didn't know of any, but move to adjourn, and we got a second. All in favor? Let's go home. Thank you.